Ladies and gentlemen, we present the Piddingtons. Here is your commentator, Colin Wells.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're now going to hear the third broadcast in a very exciting series, and I think tonight's show will surprise even those of you who heard the first two. As usual, we have four distinguished people to act as judges. They are Sir Herbert Dunico, J.P., Mr. Hugh Ross Williamson, historian and broadcaster, and that fine film actor, Dennis Price, and Captain Dorling, DSO, known to you also as Taffray. Tonight, Piddington will carry out his experiments in telepathy a stage further by asking you, the listeners, to take part in an attempt at mass thought transference. An even more daring experiment will be one in which Piddington attempts to communicate with his wife, Lesley Pope, at long distance. A few minutes ago, the studio audience here saw Lesley Pope leave, escorted by Captain Dorling, Taffrail, and by Mr. Hugh Ross Williamson. At this moment, Lesley and the judges are in a car travelling across town to the Tower of London. When they get there, the judges will communicate with us here to let us know that Lesley is waiting to receive her husband's telepathic message from this studio. Meanwhile, Piddington is going to carry out some other tests here in the studio. To represent you, the listeners, we have not only our studio audience, but the other two judges, Sir Herbert Dunico and Mr. Dennis Price. These two judges, with the studio audience, are seated here in the BBC's Piccadilly studio, which many of you will remember as the stage door canteen during the war. Piddington and I are standing on a platform in the middle of the studio with open space all round us. Now, you've heard Piddington in previous broadcasts transmit mental impressions to his wife. Tonight, during Lesley's absence, Piddington will introduce a new experiment. He'll attempt a direct reception in which both listeners at home and the audience here will be asked to act as transmitters to pass on a mental impression. For this test, we've invited Dennis Price to bring along a packet of film stars, or I should say film stars' photographs. Several of these will be selected by a judge. You'll be asked to concentrate on each of them in turn, and Piddington will endeavour to identify them. And now I leave it to Piddington himself to explain the details to you.
Thank you, Colin Wells. I feel that you must all know the 20 questions broadcasting procedure, and that seems ideal for this test. Sir Herbert Dunico and Colin Wells will go out to the second soundproof studio, and there, where you can hear and I can't, Colin Wells will ask Sir Herbert to select one of the photographs. This selection will be indicated to our studio audience here by a printed card held up by a studio attendant wearing earphones which connect him with the second soundproof studio. He will be the only one in this main studio to hear the name which you will hear at home. I will not see these cards as I will be blindfolded and in fact will stand with my back to the cards and where they're held up. Colin Wells and Sir Herbert have now gone to our other studio, and Dennis Price will, you come forward please and blindfold me. Just tie the handkerchief around and then in 2 knots at the back please. And then make sure that the studio attendant is behind my back so that I can't see him. And then just guide me to the microphone. Just put my hand on the microphone. And the audience is out here, is it? In front. Thank you very much. Right. And now, in the second soundproof studio, Colin Wells will ask Sir Herbert Dunico to choose one of these film stars' photographs. When you at home hear the name, I want you to concentrate on it, and also in the studio, when you see the card held up, would you help me by concentrating, and I will attempt to identify it. We now cross to the second soundproof studio.
Well, here we are in the second soundproof studio, similar to the one used in 20 questions. Sir Herbert Dunico, would you open the packet and empty the photographs onto the table?
Certainly.
Well, Sir Herbert is doing this. There seem to be about a dozen photographs. And would you, sir, please choose one?
It's quite a galaxy of beauty. Ann Todd.
Right. Now, you know the name, and the studio audience in the main studio will see the name held up on a card. A gong will be struck, and Piddington will attempt to receive the impression. We now cross to the main studio.
Will you concentrate On just a surname, please. I think it's Todd. Ann Todd. We now cross back to the second soundproof studio.
Sir Herbert, would you be so kind as to choose another film star for us?
Yes, I select Jean Kent.
And now we cross back to the main studio.
Will you concentrate again just on the surname? More intently, please. Is it Jean Kent? And now, back to Colin Wills and Sir Herbert Donegal in the second soundproof studio, where the judge will be asked to choose a final photograph.
Sir Herbert, would you please make a final choice for us?
Yes, I think I'll change Jack Warner.
Thank you very much, and we'll cross back to the main studio.
Again, will you concentrate on the surname first? Is it Jack Warner?
Well, I've just come back from the soundproof studio, and Sir Herbert Donegal is on his way back, and Piddingtons are now going to attempt a test involving the transmission of numbers. This is one of the experiments that they practiced, he and Russell Baden, in Changi Prison Camp, Singapore. And to carry out this experiment again tonight, as in those prison camp days, here is Piddington's fellow prisoner of war and fellow experimenter at Changi Camp, Russell Baden. Good evening, Russell.
Good evening, Colin.
Well, we enjoyed hearing your story last week about those early experiments, and I'm glad we persuaded you to come along again tonight. I suppose you've experimented with Piddington quite a lot since those early days in Singapore.
No, I'm afraid not at all, Colin. I've been much too busy these last 3 years trying to persuade the examiners at the Sydney University to let me have a degree in law.
I see.
So I haven't worked with him since we left Changi.
Still, I suppose you feel quite confident about tonight. It always went well, didn't it?
Well, as a matter of fact, it didn't. I remember particularly one occasion in Changi when we were working with 10 Dutchmen who were large men in a rather small cell meant for one Asiatic felon. And they persisted in thinking in Dutch and we persisted in thinking in English, so we didn't get anything at all.
Well, I hope there's no one thinking in Dutch tonight. Are you ready, Russell?
Yes, I'm fine.
Well, Piddington, let's see how you go tonight.
Just before we go any further, will you, Colin Wills, pick someone out of the audience to take Russell outside the studio?
Yes. In the end of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th row, there's a lady 3 along in a floral dress, I think. Good job. Would you mind that?
Not at all, please, Doctor.
Right. Now, will you please take Russell outside, just through the door at the back of the studio, and we don't want him to see or hear anything that happens in here. We'll call you later.
So now, Russell Baden's been taken out through the door at the back of the studio by this lady that I selected, and the door is closed behind him.
Right. Now he's gone. Would you, Dennis Price, please come up here to the blackboard, take a piece of chalk, and in large figures write up any 3-figure number. That is anything between 100 and 999.
All right.
Now,
And would you just initial it with your initials so that we know for sure whose it is? Thank you.
thank you. And now, Sir Herbert, would you do the same? Put your number on top or directly above Dennis Price's number, just wherever you feel inclined. And while Sir Herbert is doing that, would you, Dennis Price, choose somebody out of the audience to write up a third number? Bring whomever you choose up here on the platform. Just do that as quickly as you can. Now, would you, sir, print up a three-figure number either in between or on top if you like, or underneath the other two numbers?
And would you initial, please? Thank you.
Now,
the top number was written down by Sir Herbert Dunnicliffe, the second one by Dennis Price, and the third one by the gentleman from the audience. And I'd like you to remember that. First by Sir Herbert Dunnicliffe, second Dennis Price, third by the member of the audience. That's important for later on.
now would you, Sir Herbert, draw a line under those three numbers and add them up as quickly as possible. Back to school. And now, Dennis Price, would you just check that so if there's a mistake we will know who to blame?
Well, I don't know. I think Sir Herbert's better add it up than I. Yes, I pass his judgment on that.
Do you pass that judgment? Well, now...
Briefly, what's been done is to provide a four-figure number, 1,159, 1159, by using two judges and a member of the audience. I suggest that you write down this number, you listening at home. It's 1159. Now, would you, Mr. Price, cover the blackboard with this cloth? Just examine the cloth if you like, in case there's anything funny about it. And so that when Russell Braddon comes back, he can't see any of the numbers or the total. Now, in a moment, Russell Braddon will be recalled. In the meantime, Piddington will be placed by Mr. Dennis Price somewhere, anywhere in the studio. Russell Braddon will endeavour, first of all, to determine... Please go ahead. Russell Braddon will endeavour, first of all, to determine who provided which numbers on the board, and then he'll attempt accurately to reproduce the total figure. Well, Dennis Price has taken Piddington down into the studio, and I'm going to ask Sir Herbert Dunnicliffe to ask certain check questions of the lady who took Russell Braddon out when they return. Now, the check question is simply to ask that he was unable to hear anything that went on in here. Now, would you ask that Russell Braddon be recalled, please? And when he returns, would you please ask him this question? Perhaps if you'd stand the other side. Now, they are just returning. Russell Braddon and the lady who took him out are coming onto the platform, and Sir Herbert Dunnicliffe is going to ask the lady the question.
Now, while you were outside with Russell Braddon, did you see or hear anything that happened in this studio?
Whatever.
Nothing
Nothing
whatever.
whatever.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you very much. Now, over to you, Russell Braddon.
Would you all first concentrate on who wrote the first number and who wrote the second number and who wrote the third number, please? Right. I think, Sir Herbert, that you wrote the first, and I think, Mr. Dennis Price, that you wrote the second, and I think that someone out of the audience wrote the third. Now, would you please concentrate on the total of those three sets of figures? I receive a 1 and a 5 and a 9 and a 2. Would you concentrate on the order in which those figures come, please? I think that the total of the three sets of figures is 2,159. Am I right, Colin Wills?
You're not completely right. It's 1,159. The order in which you named the people was correct. And here is a test completely new to this series. You at home are now the ones most actively involved. Perhaps, Piddington, you'd better explain.
Thank you, Colin Wills. We have been very pleased to hear from so many of you that during our last two broadcasts, some of you received the same impressions as Lesley did. Sometimes in some homes even more quickly than she did. It is really most pleasant to feel that you're working with us so closely. And because of that, I would now like all of you at home to join with me in a test which will give you an opportunity to take an active role in an experiment. This, quite simply, is what we'll do. We here in the studio will concentrate on a colour, and you at home will try to receive it. There on the board, we have written 5 colours: red, orange, yellow, violet, and green. We've taken 5 of the colours of the rainbow. One of the judges, Sir Herbert Dunico, will come to the blackboard in a few seconds and mark off any one of these rainbow colours with a cross, whichever colour he happens to fancy. Then a gong will sound in this studio, and all of us here, that's about 200 people, will concentrate as strongly as possible on that colour. We hope that you, the listeners, in the 10-second silence that follows the gong, will receive the right impression. Now, how about just jotting down those colours? I'll call them again: red, orange, yellow, violet, and green. Now, I feel it only fair to warn you that you'll find some difference of opinion in your home. Father will be quite certain that he's right and that you're wrong, and you'll be quite sure that you're right and everyone else is wrong. But that's what makes family life so enjoyable, so let's try it now. Would you mark a colour, just anyone at all, on the board with a cross? Now, imagine that you at home can see the colours. It is one of the 5: red, orange, yellow, violet, green. Free your mind of thought. Relax. You'll either see or feel or know which colour I am projecting. Write it down. On the sound of the gong, just concentrate. Well, there you are. I told you 5 colours. We in the studio concentrated on one, and I hope that you received the correct impression.
Next Thursday, during the next broadcast in this series, Piddington will tell you the colour impression we attempted to project. Until then, I wonder what colour you got. And now for our final test, and this is a most exciting one. While we wait here in the Piccadilly studio, away across town in the Tower of London, Lesley Pope is at this moment awaiting the most difficult test she's ever attempted. She is in the tower, in the bloody tower, in the Tower of London, and with her are Captain Dorling, Taffrail, and Mr. Hugh Ross Williamson. And we'll hear from them very shortly.
I will attempt to transmit to Lesley a line of print selected from a number of books on the table here in the studio. Half a dozen people will actually take part in the selection of the line. In this way, I'm sure you'll agree that the possibility of a prearranged choice is removed. I will ask several members of the studio audience each to write a figure on a pad. These figures will be added up. The total will indicate the page of a book. To leave you without doubt, each figure will be initialed by the person supplying it.
Well, now, Piddington is going down into the audience with his pad, and he's stopped at a gentleman in the second row who's writing down a number and who will be asked to initial it. That is done.
Just about that size, so it can be added up afterwards. How many should do?
Just one, yes, and then sign your name to it. Just out here at the side, that's right. Thank you. We haven't got much time, I'm awfully sorry.
He's hurrying on. The lady now in the fourth row. Writing down a number.
Sign your name to it. And would you do that, please? Just a single finger under there and sign your name to it. Would you mind doing that, please? Just a single finger under there. Would you mind doing that, please? Another single finger under there and sign your name to it. Now, would you add up those figures? And then you just sign your name to that. And now, that hasn't given us a very large total. Would you like to put that in the hundreds by adding either 1, 2, 3, or 4 in front of that? And then just sign your name to that, just as quickly as you can, because I'm awfully sorry, time is really running short. Thank you very much.
He's collected his numbers. He is coming quickly back to the platform.
Dennis Price, would you take the pad and come onto the platform with me? And would you, judge number 3, Sir Herbert, come to the platform and from the books on the table, pick up 1. Just whichever book you like from the table. Now, would you like to change your mind? Would you like to put that book back and take another one? You've changed your mind.
Yes, I
Right.
He has changed his mind.
Now, the total of the sum will indicate the page in the book. Dennis Price, would you turn up the page in the book with the help of Sir Herbert? Now, to find a line down, I want you to add the figures in the total together and write that down at the side.
This is done.
Just add those 3 together.
Yes.
And write that down. Now, would you count down that number of lines in the page? Just come round and check that.
On the top, I think.
Just mark that at each end with the pencil, and then would you read out the line to the listening audience? Just a line that you have marked there.
The line selected is, "Be abandoned," as the electrician said that they would have no current.
Now, would you just repeat that again in case they are writing it down at home?
Be abandoned, as the electrician said that they would have no current.
Now, would you tell the listeners the name of the book?
The name of the book is George Miller.
And while Colin Wills calls in the Tower of London, would you, Dennis Price, take the book and print up the line on the blackboard for the studio audience to see it?
Yes, with pleasure.
I shall now call in the Tower of London. Are you there, Captain Dorling and Mr. Hugh Ross Williamson?
Yes, we're in the bloody tower, where the little princes were supposed to have been smothered in 1483.
That's the room that most of you probably know if you visited. The 4-foot walls, Lesley standing in an embrasure of the window, quite near the picture of Sir Walter Raleigh, and we are standing by the copy of Sir Walter Raleigh's book, The History of the World, that he wrote in this room.
Thank you very much. Are you there, Lesley Pope?
Yes, I'm here, very closely guarded by Captain Dorling and Mr. Ross Williamson. I must say I'm very glad I've got them here with me.
Now, to put you all in the picture, so far a book has been selected and a page and a line in it indicated by figures supplied by the studio audience. Sir Herbert Dunico has read the line to the listening audience, and at this moment Dennis Price has just completed writing it on the blackboard in the studio. And here is Piddington speaking in the Piccadilly studio to ask a question of the judges who are with Lesley in the tower.
Judge number 1, Captain Dorling. Has Lesley been with you since she left this studio before the broadcast began?
Yes, every second.
And Mr. Ross Williamson, have you any idea of the book selected, the page number, or what the line is?
No idea at all.
Now, Dennis Price, as I say, has finished writing the line on the blackboard. And remember, Piddington is here in the Piccadilly studio, and Lesley is in the Tower of London. Are you ready to go ahead with the test, Piddington?
Yes, I am. In just a moment, at the sound of the gong, I want your complete silence, your sympathy, and your cooperation. Now concentrate on the line while I attempt to transmit it to Lesley.
Men. Men. Light. Something to do. An electrician. Something about light and electricians. People being left. Will you concentrate on the word that's like being left, people being left, abandoned. Abandoned. The electricians talking. Said that not light. Concentrate on the word like light. Current. No current. Electricians said they would not have current. I think the whole line is abandoned, as the electricians said there would not be current.
I ask you, Sir Herbert, as Judge number 3, would you say that that was substantially correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Piddington, and thank you, Lesley, for a truly remarkable broadcast. Thank you, the judges who went to the Tower, Captain Dorling and Mr. Hugh Ross Williamson. Thank you, Sir Herbert Donico, and thank you, Dennis Price. Thanks, Russell Braddon, and our audience. And next week, we hope to have some more exciting news for you. And until next Thursday night at the same time, 9 o'clock, for the Piddingtons' 4th broadcast, I'll say good night.
You've been listening to a program featuring the Piddingtons and as a special guest, Russell Braddon. The judges were Sir Herbert Donico, J.P., Commander Dorling, DSO, Taffrell, Mr. Hugh Ross Williamson, and Dennis Price. Your commentator was Colin Wells, and the production was by Frederick Piffard.